Hello, everyone. It's Marilynn Hughes from the Out of Body Travel Foundation, here live to answer your questions. Again, please subscribe and please consider becoming a member. All those things help us to become searchable and also to keep our stuff free for everybody around the world. So let's get started. Let's just dive right in here because we have a little pile here of things to talk about. I have a couple of questions for your live. So let's dive right in here. Since I have heard many arguments that Christmas and Easter have pagan origins involving winter solstice, Roman sun festival of Saturnalia, Semiramis, the wife of Nimrod, the sun god, and her son Tammuz, born on December 25th, and other pagan deities such as Mithra, Isis, Osiris, Mesopotamian goddess of fertility and love, Inanna, Ishtar, etc., and that Christmas tree, the Christmas tree is a phallic symbol. A couple of scriptures came to my mind in the book of Jeremiah 7:18, which I quote. The children gather wood, the fathers light the fire, and the women knead the dough and make cakes to offer to the Queen of Heaven. They pour out drink offerings to other gods to arouse my anger. And Jeremiah 44:19, the women added, when we burned incense to the Queen of Heaven, poured out wine offerings to her, and made cakes for her with her image on them, do you think our husbands didn't approve? Some claim that celebrating Christmas is wrong and should not be celebrated since it is mixed up with paganism. However, most Christians do celebrate Christmas because it is the birth of our Savior, Jesus Christ, as stated in Luke 2:6, which I quote, while they were in Bethlehem, the time came for Mary to have her child. She gave birth to her firstborn son. She wrapped him in strips of cloth and laid him in a manger because there wasn't any room for them in the inn. With that in my mind, my question to you is, in your out-of-body experiences, have you seen if Christmas is celebrated in heaven? So there's the first question. So we'll take that first because it goes right into the second. I have not seen the actual celebration of Christmas in heaven. I have seen some other things around it. Like I was taken to see the star of heaven that is kept in a holy receptacle. And I saw that during the initiations into the mysteries. It was something that I had to earn to go see the star of Jesus. And it was very, very holy, and I was very, very honored. I've seen things about the birth of Christ and about Christmas in a variety of different experiences throughout my experiences that are not all in one experience. So I have no question that the birth of Christ was an extremely and profoundly important holy event. And I personally would say I have no issue with celebrating Christmas. And I don't really think it matters that the dates may coincide with dates that were used for other things in ancient days. I just don't think it matters. I think that what matters is our own faith and our own devotion and what we are celebrating and what we are honoring ourselves today, and individually and as the body of Christ. And so I can say that all of the experiences that I've had around not just the birth of Christ, but all of the events in the life of Christ are always presented with a profoundly deep sanctity. I recently had an experience, and the experience was a huge experience, but I'm going to tell you a small part of it that relates a little bit to this question, where part of the experience, I was taken onto a sleigh, and there was an elder gentleman who was going to drive this sleigh, and this sleigh was going to take me and some others on a roller coaster. And this roller coaster was going to go through the rosary, the stations of the rosary, so to speak. So basically, the mysteries of the rosary, which are, for those who may not be familiar with it, the mysteries of Christ's life. The holy mysteries of the rosary are moments in Christ's life that we pause to pray and meditate upon. And this was just so holy and sanctified, but it was also just really, really neat and really cool because you're going on this roller coaster through the stations of the rosary. And so this accelerated path through the life of Christ and experiencing the massive vibrations of it. And it was just so fantastic and special and really, really a beautiful experience. And so I think that what I would say is that all the moments of Christ's life have been presented to me as having great significance and holiness. And I would not feel any concern at all about celebrating Christmas or any of the moments in Christ's life. And, ironically, in Catholicism, that's kind of the point of the liturgical year, because every day of our liturgical year celebrates a different moment in the life of Christ, the life of the apostles. And that's ironically the point of liturgy. And that's a whole nother subject that's really worth looking into. It's another subject that I really like. I have a whole section of books on liturgical theology. And for those who know me, they know that I really do like different theologies. So like, sacramental theology, liturgical theology, systematic theology, moral theology, dogmatic theology. I like that stuff. And liturgical theology is, all about the liturgy. And the liturgy is about the liturgy of the church, which is the celebration on every single day of the year of these different events in the life of Christ and in the life of the apostles and in the life of the church, which is the body of the people, which is all of us who celebrate the life of Christ, our Redeemer. And so all those things are just really, really holy and really, really important. And I don't think we need to worry about what other things may have been celebrated or may still be celebrated on subsequent days of the year. So, but it's a good question and very interesting too, of all the different things that, we do see historically. Let me just say hello to everybody who's here. We have John. Hi. Adriana, it's always a treat to have a live with Marilynn. How are you? I'm doing great, and it's great to have you here. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining, John. And we have Winsong. Hello. Great to see you. MT is here. She says, hi, everyone. Adriana says, oh, wow. Thank you. I will look into liturgy. Yes, you're going to love liturgy. This is something, it's like a whole window of a whole new area of study that you can open up for yourself. It's exciting. And I don't know anything about liturgies. I am eager to learn. Thank you. Oh, and Adriana, about that, one of the things that I did with one of my books that I believe you may have already read, so that makes it a little more complex, but The Limb of the Redemption explored the liturgies. And that was a period of time where I really went deeply into the liturgies. And I actually collected all the liturgies of the church, and I have them right over there. And so I have all these different liturgies. One of the things that we have from the early church is that all of the apostles went to different places, and they formulated liturgies in the areas that they were. So we have the Liturgy of Jerusalem, which was founded by St. James. We have the Liturgy of St. Mark. We have St. Thomas. We have St. Paul's Liturgy, which is the Roman Catholic, what ended up being the Roman Catholic. For the most part, St. James and what he did ended up moving out and branching out into Orthodoxy. But there's also all these other schools that ended up being, the Armenian churches, the Coptic church in Egypt. And these were all the different trails of the apostles. And so we find that this is all the different trails of the same Lord. And so this is fascinating stuff. So yes, and you might want to, maybe go back and see if you might have missed that in the Limb of the Redemption, because it's all over there. And so, okay, so let's go see what else is in here. So my second question is about heaven and hell. It's always a fun topic. Bible talks about heaven and hell. It describes hell as a lake of fire in Revelation 20:10, and I quote, "And the devil who deceived them was thrown into the lake of burning sulfur, where the beast and the false prophet had been thrown. They will be tormented day and night forever and ever." And in Revelation 14:15, which I quote, "Then death and Hades were thrown into the lake of fire. The lake of fire is the second death. Anyone whose name was not found written in the book of life was thrown into the lake of fire." And Jesus spoke about hell in Matthew 25:41, which I quote, "Then he will say to those on his left, 'Depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire, prepared for the devil and his angels.'" Since you have done much work helping souls in the lower realms, my question to you is, in your out-of-body travels, have you seen specifically a lake of fire in hell? Yes, but I've also seen a realm that's completely ice. I've seen realms that are like where there's just constant ravages of wind. I've seen realms like muddy flats, which are just like mud and icky muddy goo. It's just a different kind of ick. I've seen a lot of different types of I guess the way to put it is grossness. So there are some lower realms where it's it's all the gross things you can think of, like feces, vomit, pus. And then you can say too that there are also hell realms where it's not necessarily grossness, it's a proliferation of demons that torment souls. There's also places where it's totally quiet, but it's just completely absent of God. So there's all kinds of different types of realms that you can experience in these places. And then you can also read in a lot of different spiritual texts by mystics from throughout time of many other types of realms like these. Ironically, since we were speaking of liturgies and the apostles and stuff, every one of the apostles also wrote an apocalypse. And in their apocalypses, and I'm specifically thinking of St. Paul's and St. Peter's, they had extremely vivid trips to heaven and hell. And they go into a really profound detail about the torments that they witnessed in the hell realms. And so you might find some of those books, and they're in the apocryphal books of the New Testament. You might find them to be interesting. But every one of the apostles had an apocalypse. They had a book of Acts, and they also had gospel. And so those exist. They're available in the apocryphal texts of the New Testament. They're just not all in the canon of the New Testament that was put into the actual Bible. But those books do exist. So there are some questions here. Let me see if I can answer those. Okay. Uh, Adriana says, yes, I read the Limb of Redemption and I saw the liturgies. I read super fast. I will go back and carefully read the liturgies part. Great. Good idea. Sounds great. The book, A Wanderer in the Spirit Lands, paints a great picture and explained very well. Thank you for the tip about this book. You're very welcome. It's a very interesting text, isn't it? I thought so as well. So I'm glad you found that helpful. And so then going forward, also, have you seen the book of life as described in the book of Revelation? Yes, I have. And I saw it in the during the initiations into the mysteries. And if you read the mysteries of the redemption, it was written about, and you might remember it as the book of the eight. And that was when I was actually when my name was put in the book, and I was allowed to retrieve the book from the interior of the empty tomb in the Great Pyramid. And so there's a lot to that, because the book of the eight represents the immortal. And so there was a lot there in the whole rites of passage, the initiations into the mysteries, and that book of the eights. There's a lot more to it. And, you just gave me an idea about that would be something to write about, wouldn't it? The book of the eights. And I might have to do that. So a little idea popped into my head there. Can you describe this precious book? I did, there is a picture, there's a painting that I did where I painted the symbol that was on the cover of the book of the eights. It had just a little symbol on it. And you can go to the website and look through the paintings they're presented in a video. And there is a painting that shows the book of the eights. And because I wanted to capture what the cover looked like. It's very simple. It was just a white book, said the book of the eights, and the eights was written out, not the number, it was written out, and it had this little symbol on it. Very simple symbol, but I obviously thought that must be an important symbol, and I put it there. And so I think I've read and seen your artwork about the book of life, but I love your eloquent verbal explanations. Thank you very much. So yes. Yes. And then later on, I was told to translate the book of the eights. And that was later on in the mysteries of the redemption, when I went through another similar type of initiation into a higher mystery of the book of the eights, into the ascension. And let's see here. I think there's some thoughts here. MT said, I once was brought down to the fire of hell. This was very, very beginning of my journey. I was lowered into the fire as I was lowered. I saw many other souls going down faster than I was lowered into. My spirit screamed, no, 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 and prayed so hard in my spirit. Then I was, by the grace of God, lifted up. I do think I was given a second chance at that time. Wow, that's powerful. Thank you for sharing that, MT. Reminds me a little bit of, Teresa of Avila saying what her experience, where she was shown her place in hell. And she said kind of the same thing. Adriana, yes, I remember the book of the eights. Thank you, MT, for sharing your experience. Yes. And so, okay, so just checking here, make sure I didn't miss any questions on this one. And awesome. Okay, so here we go. Let's continue forward. Great questions. As always, you guys always send me great questions. I really appreciate that. Okay. All right. The other day I was contemplating about my life and how I always shed many tears in all my daily morning prayers and sometimes throughout the day in my contemplations. Someone joined in. It's Reverence, Awe, and Wonder. Welcome. Great to have you. Let's see. I prayed very intently to God if he would give me a day without crying and weeping over the sorrows of life, a day that I only had joy. I felt that God answered my prayer later on that day when I read on page 320 of your book, The Christ of the Redemption, about your experience with your mother, and I will quote the experience. My mother took me to a gathering of souls who were all showing openly a set of certificates they all held, which designated them to perform specific functions within the realm and with other souls on earth to assist them. My mother had 2 certificates that she showed me, both in relation to my own soul at this time. One said that she was guardian angeling me, and the other designated her as the overseer of a crying person, which was also me, although I had not realized it. Mom explained that she had been given the task to watch over me through this difficult time in my life and that she was here to give me comfort as she acknowledged that a crying person is someone who is interiorly weepful due to circumstances occurring in their life. My mother led me to a priest who was looking after a group of crying souls, unquote. And as you tell the experience, you end with the acknowledgement that you finally understood. Your experience was a powerful reminder to me that we receive help from God at all times. I would like to think that my father, who I have not seen since I was 2 years old, is my guardian angel. And, there's a really good chance that he is, because I can tell you that I have seen that more often than not, parents and grandparents do become guardian angels over their children and their grandchildren. It's very common. I have not seen him for over 50 years, but I know he is deceased now because once I woke up from a dream or astral travel in which I heard his voice talking to me. I knew it was him and his voice was so soothing. I write this because in a way, many of us are crying souls here on earth. And I hope that your experience helps people as they hear the story, even if they don't read it in your book, as well as it helped me, reminding me we are not forgotten. I always love to hear your insights if you have any about the way you felt with this experience. Please share with us on the other side of YouTube. Thank you, dear Marilynn. Well, I really appreciate that. And it's always good to hear, someone have benefited from reading one of my experiences. And this experience was really helpful to me as well, because at the time I was going through something tough, and it was very touching to realize that my mother was still there and actually basically holding my hand, even though I didn't know it, and it was also very moving to just know that these things that we go through privately and quietly often are not unseen to the spirit world, to the Lord, and that the Lord is always taking care of it, even when we don't know that. So, yeah. So thank you for being so sensitive to that and recognizing that, when you read that. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so in one of my contemplations, I truly wondered if it is possible to go to heaven. I could not help but think that it is nearly impossible to make it to the higher realms, and I felt really discouraged. It's just too difficult to do what it takes, and honestly, I feel I don't stand a chance. Once I read a book called The Laws of the Spirit World. This book tells the real story of Khorshid Bhavnagri, who lost both sons in a car accident. Her deceased sons contacted her and communicated with her through automatic writing and taught her about the afterlife and the spirit world. One thing that stuck with me about their description of the spiritual world is this, and I quote, "When you leave your physical world and come to the spirit world, those who are bad and evil are taken to the lower realms by their subconscious mind. The lower realms are absolutely full. The upper or higher realms are very scarcely populated." I remember the words of Jesus in Matthew 7:14, "Because narrow is the gate and difficult is the way which leads to life, and there are few who find it." My question is, in your out-of-body travels to the higher and lower realms, have you seen if the lower realm is crowded and full of souls and the higher realms are sparse? Yeah, I would say that, yes, I would say sort of. I would say the lower realms are very crowded. The astral realms, which are more of a mid-level realm, are very crowded. And then when you go into the higher realms, I would say, though, that there are, I don't know, I'd say it's crowded, but I wouldn't say that it's sparse. So, I'm trying to think of what they might be experiencing there. When you go into the higher spheres, there's a lot of beings there. I think that, let me try to put this in a way that's understandable, but is also, I do not like to discount other people's experiences, but this sounds like this. I have not heard of this book or this author or the experience. Sometimes you have to remember how we talk about everything is vibration. And so if, we cannot count on understanding or being capable of seeing or knowing all things, from the highest of the heights to the lowest of the lows, and just assuming, okay, my son's crossed over and they can tell me these things, right? So what I'm trying to kind of put into perspective here is, it's possible that they're not capable of seeing what's in the higher realms. They may not have the vibrational or frequency capacity to do so. And so that's what they're assuming, because they have not gone through the vibrational raisings or whatever in order to actually see the populations that do reside in those higher spheres. Remember how I've talked about how if you try to go to a realm that is above your level, you feel like you're being crushed. You also can't see in them. You're not allowed to, you are unable to, you can't hear in them. There is a veil that blocks us from that. And so one of the things that we have to understand is, one of the difference between spiritualist and Christianity texts is that a lot of times people are trying to get like an ultimate truth from a spirit that is kind of just wandering around the afterlife, rather than like when you're listening to, like, say, a Saint Catherine of Siena, who's more of a higher level soul. Or, I'm thinking of like the great mystics, St. Gertrude the Great, St. Teresa of Avila, St. John of the Cross, and some of these souls who are actually communing with really high levels. Some of them, even St. Francis of Assisi, these all communed with our Lord, with the Blessed Mother, and the Holy Spirit. And so they brought in things from a much higher level of knowledge. And so she's communicating possibly, it sounds like, with her sons, and her sons have the capacity that they have. They may not be able to see what's going on in the higher realms yet. They may eventually get to that point and be able to tell her more, but that's why you have to be careful with question the source. Question the source. Because we can never assume that what we've seen is all there is, because we are not capable of knowing all that is true and all that exists, because we're just simple human creatures, if that makes sense. And so I hope I didn't go too much into that, but I think it's important. It's important so that we understand that there's a difference in the instruments. Okay. In the same subject, the book talks about 7 realms or planes, each having 10 levels or stages through which our spirit souls have to make its journey to reach the higher realms. Okay, so I quote the book. Realm 1 is the lowest and darkest, most horrible place. There are bare rocks with crawling creatures and human souls with disfigured bodies. Their bodies are much heavier than ours. They've never even seen a tiny spark of light any time. Realm 2, lower realm, is also horrible, but not as dark as Realm 1, nor are their bodies so heavy and disfigured. They also live in rocky caves, hating each other and using filthy, terrible language and seeing no light or good things. Realm 3, another lower realm, a little better, but still no light. And there's a lot more detail. I'm going to zip through this a little more. Realm 4 is an in-between realm. Realm 5 is the beginning of heaven, and it is a very beautiful place like Earth. Realm 6 is a higher realm and is very beautiful, full of wonderful bright green grass and flowers you cannot see on Earth. Always bright throughout like a sunny day. Souls have nearly perfect, very light bodies. Realm 7 is the highest. People on Earth could never imagine how beautiful it is. Okay. And this is what I thought she might be getting to in her question. In the Mysteries of the Redemption book, you speak of the universal sphere of realms. Realms 1 and 2, first and second dimension, lower worlds, total darkness. Realm 3 and 4, third and fourth dimension, border worlds, light and darkness. 5 and above, fifth dimension, and above, upper worlds, light. The Laws of the Spirit World book and the Mystery of the Redemption book describe the realms similarly. My question is, in your out-of-body travels, have you gone to the 6 or 7 realms dimensions specifically? And what is the most amazing, ineffable memory of these higher realms that stuck with you and is so beyond description and beautiful, and for that alone you would do anything and everything impossible to get there one day? Thank you, Marilynn. I send you my love. God bless you and protect you. Okay, so there is a similarity in the descriptions. They're pretty close. They're not identical, but there's a similarity for sure. I guess what I would say, the question is, in your out-of-body travels, have you gone to the 6 or 7 realm dimensions specifically? I have not experienced it in that way, that there's the 6 or 7 dimensions. I've gone to the 5th realms and above. And what I've experienced is that there's an infinite number of light realms above the 5th. I've been to the 23rd dimension of the golden angels. I've been to hundreds and hundreds of infinite dimensions that are anywhere from 5 to infinity. And so the concept of the 6 or 7 realms is different for this other writer than it is for me. But in terms of what they're trying to state, which is, have you been to some of these higher heavens? I have been to some higher heavens. I have no doubt that there are much higher heavens that I have not seen as well. What's the most amazing, ineffable memory of these higher realms that stuck with you? And what would I do for that alone? there's nothing that I would do anything and everything to get there one day, because it would always have to be within the context of God's will. And so I would do whatever God would ask me to go, wherever he would ask me to go. So whether that were above, below, or in the Midlands, that's where it would be. But I have seen things of immense beauty in a whole lot of different contexts. You know, for instance, the golden angels in the 23rd dimension, who are just beautiful beyond measure, and just being in their presence, there is a sense that is hard to describe. But they're translucent but golden. And when you're in their presence, there's just like a sense of wonder. There's a sense of, wow. Thank you, John. Thank you very much for your super chat. He says, glad you were having this live stream and answering questions. Thank you, John. Thank you so much. I appreciate that so much. We really appreciate that. So that's one of the places I've been to. You know, all of the realms of the initiations into the mysteries that I've written about, all of the rites of passage that I've written about. One of my favorite places is the planet of the Pure Lands. And because it is my favorite, I utilized it in the writing of the screenplays that I've been doing for the Mysteries of the Redemption screenplays, as the opening scenes of the episodes that I've been writing. And the reason I love this place so much is because of this. And I'll tell you, this planet, it has the 2 suns and the 4 moons. And it is, this planet of the Pure Lands is the place where all the masters reside. And so the masters of all the religions and tribes, and from all kinds of, you know, all around the world. So, you know, you'll have Avalokiteshvara floating around on her cloud. You'll have Buddhas, you know, sitting under trees, meditating. You'll have all the Christian prophets and saints, and you'll have Jesus and the apostles, and, you know, all the Hindu saints, Ramakrishna. It's the place is populated with the masters of the earth, and they meet there at night in the out-of-body travel state. Many of these are obviously, you know, in the afterlife, so they're not alive on earth like I am, but there's others who are alive on earth who are like me, who will travel there. We go there and we all discuss the work that we're doing to help serve souls and to try to do the work of the redemption on earth. And all the masters, they discuss these things, and it's such a beautiful thing. And we ask for guidance as to, you know, this is what I'm doing, and this is how should I do this better? And they all like congregate and share, and it's just the most beautiful thing. And I have a little cabin up there at the top of a hill where I can go to rest and you know, get away. And I just love that place. Another place that I go to a lot now, I mean, there are so many places that are just stunning beyond belief. So I'm just going to tell you some of the places I'm going to now that I'll just, you know, share. You know, some of the one of the places I go to a lot now is this cathedral in the galactic heavens, where I work out of as the little blue nun. And I go there at night, and one of the priests leaves behind a note that it gives me my mission and my work for the night. I pick up the note, I get into my habit, and then I zip across the universe and do my work. I recently had a beautiful experience with Pope Francis. Oh, wow. Thank you. We have another super chat from Adriana. Thank you for answering our questions. You're so welcome. And thank you so much. I so appreciate that. Thank you. I had this really beautiful experience shortly after Pope Francis passed. And I was taken into this beautiful cathedral in the heavens, in the galactic heavens. And Pope Francis appeared above me, and he just started pouring energy into me. And I realized very, very quickly, a lot of times when you have great holy souls who are crossing over, they look for places where it's like the residual energy from their work on earth, and they look for souls that they can disperse that energy. And we do that because we want that energy to be put to good use, and because it needs to stay here on earth and be utilized, and then they will continue forward. And so he started pouring all this energy into me. I went into this amazing, beautiful ecstasy and was vibrating at this amazing high speeds. And it went on for at least an hour. And it was just amazing. But I've had the usual things that a lot of people will talk about. I've been to a lot of the cities of light, the cathedrals in the sky. I've seen the Holy Mass play out in the heavens. So many things, but it's all in my books. So hopefully that's somewhat helpful, but we'll keep going. And so let's keep going here. And then here we are. Okay, here we go. All right. Yes, we got to go to this. Okay, so hi, you might not remember me, but I've always followed your work from the early days. I used to take part in discussions on the old forum on the website. Those group forums are great and were so helpful. You've always provided teachings around the spiritual development aspects of out-of-body experience rather than the surface stuff, which is why I found your work in the first place. I guess that's what I was looking for as a result of my own experiences. Those experiences also made it very clear that there were also bad guys out there, that they were very real and had an influence on our lives from the shadows. During some of those experiences, the metaphorical curtains were flung wide open, and I got a glimpse of an awe-inspiring and sometimes very frightening bigger picture. You really helped me to figure out what was happening and navigate through it when I felt I was going a bit crazy. Not subjects for the faint of heart or discussions you can have necessarily with those closest to you. And the demonic came after me pretty hard in those early days as I was figuring things out for the first time. They noticed that I noticed. Again, you might not remember, but as a result and with your guidance, I began the journey to becoming a Catholic in my 40s, which was amazing. And then I got a bit lost, whether that's the stress of family life, work, and likely an element of demonic influence. I drifted away from the church and fell back into recurring patterns of sinful behavior. I didn't feel worthy of walking back in there, and now I think about it, I also feared confronting the darkness again because I'd fallen behind in my faith, fallen to mortal sin, and I was aware of how vulnerable that made me. They don't show themselves so much these days, of course. Why would they? I guess it's been a case of job done from their experience and perspective. Today, I went to Mass for the first time in years in the beautiful crypt chapel underneath Liverpool Catholic Cathedral. I didn't take Holy Communion, obviously, but afterwards I went to confession and opened my heart to God again and was granted absolution. It feels good. It's the first step, but the only right first step I know. Next comes the 3 pillars you taught me: prayer, meditation, and spiritual reading. It's going to be tough, and they will, of course, show up again in force at some point, but I'm ready because I'm not alone now. I'm so grateful that I'm a Catholic and have the sacraments there for me now. So anyway, dropping you a message felt like the right thing to do today. I hope you are well. I still follow you. The YouTube videos are great. Wish me luck, Marilynn, and pray for me if you can. I'm praying for you. Much love. Make sure I go to the right page here. Okay. Okay, there it is. All right. Hi. Your letter gave me so many warm fuzzies, I can't even express it. Of course, I remember you, and I've often wondered how you were and if you were still following your spiritual journey. I always loved hearing and answering your questions and was actually just thinking of you last week. I was wondering where you were, if you were okay, and hoping you were doing well. Your email made my year. Thank you so much for sharing with me. I am honored and so grateful to have been a part of your life and journey. And I'm so happy you found yourself returning to the spiritual walk and getting back on track. Remember what I always said? The only difference between us and the saints is that they always get back up. Of course, I think that was someone else's quote, but I don't remember if it was Mother Angelica or someone else. The chapel you return to sounds beautiful, mysterious, and holy. Send pics if you can. If not, no worries. I'm sorry we lost those forums. A lot of people have told me they miss them. Great to hear from you. And then this person said, so happy you remember. I can honestly say I wouldn't be a Catholic today if it weren't for you. You taught me about the absolute authority that Jesus Christ has over the demonic and how to call on him when we need him. It's mind-blowing when you see and feel it in action for yourself in spiritual warfare. I'm really happy that I returned to the church last week. The power of the sacrament of reconciliation is so real and tangible. I felt renewed since any sense of guilt, shame, and unworthiness just evaporated there and then. I've got a renewed vigor for prayer, spiritual reading, etc. And I have a lot of audio video to catch up on too. You and Father Ripperger are on my current playlist. Father Ripperger is an exorcist, and a lot of people love his videos. He's a good guy to listen to. I plan to return to fully take part in Mass during the weeks ahead and go forward from there. Stay in touch. So that was a nice theme. Okay. Let's see where we're at here. I would like to ask you a question about visiting another realm in the spirit world. Okay. This is my last question in regards to these two books I have read in the past, comparing to your book, and that I would love to hear your insight. So this is in relation to the laws of the spirit world. This book explains some of the laws of the spiritual world, and I quote the following passage: that no one can go higher than he or she deserves, and it is impossible for a soul to visit a higher realm as the realm is invisible to that soul. Interesting. A soul can only see his own realm and the ones below. From realm 5 onwards, a soul can sometimes visit a higher realm if certain requirements are fulfilled. Permission should be granted by the authority of that higher realm. One must undergo certain training. One must wear a protective cloak so that the extra bright light won't blind the soul and the extra light atmosphere won't suffocate the soul, as the soul is a little heavier than souls in the higher realm. So far, I agree with all of that. The soul cannot stay in that higher realm for long and cannot go often. The one thing I would disagree with this is that generally you don't get a lot of opportunities to go into a realm that you are not compatible to go into. So that doesn't really happen a lot. just because what usually the procedure usually is that you are made compatible to go there rather than, being given visits. It's more that they make you compatible to go there. So a soul can go from realm 5 to 6 and from realm 6 to 7 very rarely and for a very short time. Okay. And this is another book. I also read another book named Life in the World Unseen, and it states something similar. There are 2 ways and 2 ways only of penetrating into these lofty states. The first is through our own spiritual development and progression. Okay. The second is by a special invitation from some dweller in those regions. Any other way is barred to us by the invisible barriers of spiritual impenetrability. I have to just say right there, the first is through our own spiritual development and progression. Yes, but don't forget that all of that is grace. Okay. So, we want to remember that our own spiritual development and progression, it's a gift of grace. It's not just something that we do. It's something that God gives. And so there's a big difference there. So that's important. So that, Marilynn, you've stated in your book that once you were granted a special permission by Jesus to visit the inner parts of heaven and the higher realms as well. Okay. And yes, that was when I had a near-death experience. I can understand the reason for the special permission is explained in these books and your book, since we are not a vibrational match to the higher realms. Okay. Okay. I would not go with the special permission as explained in those books. I was having a near-death experience, and I was given this special grace from the Lord himself. Jesus took me. And so it wasn't any of the things that those books were talking about. It was simply Jesus made a decision and he did it. And it was grace. It was simply grace. My question is, were you given protective measures in order for you to be able to endure the higher realms, none of which I was aware of? How did you feel after this exceptional experience? Completely euphoric. I really, didn't want to come back, but yet I did because I made the choice to come back. But I didn't really want to because it was so beautiful. And did you feel that you had a limited time there because of this special permission? I felt like my time there had been it was kind of like an infinite time. But then, because time is different in the mystical, it was like I had been there such a long time, and then zoop, very fast, it passed along. I want to make sure I'm not missing people asking some questions here. Reverence on Wonder says, I believe we are incapable of knowing the number of realms. I would agree with you. Okay. Adriana, what a true, beautiful answer, Marilynn. It's always God's will. Amen. Thank you, Adriana. Absolutely. Grace is a gift. Amen. Thank you. Thank you, Adriana. Yes. And so, because of this special permission, did you feel that you had limited time there? There was no concept of that. It was just not, there was no concept of that when I was experiencing it. Did you come back with any special vibrational benefits or experienced any positive advantage that had a lasting effect in your earthly body? Not that I was aware of. I was just really honored and grateful for what I had been allowed to see. Were you able to accomplish anything that you would have not otherwise accomplished, but you did because you came back with this extraordinary benefit from this visit? Maybe, that was part of my near-death experience. And then I came back and I made this decision that I was going to come back, and it was my choice. I was told I had done everything I had to do, and I had decided I was going to come back because I had little kids. And then that was when, the Lord told me, I'm not going to heal you, but I'm going to help you. And he also told me, I'm going to make good use of the time you have left. And then he showed me a whole bunch of books, and that they had my name on them, that I had written them. And this was at the time of this experience, I had written 2 books. And shortly after this experience, I just started writing books like, a wild person. And so it's very possible that was the benefit, because between in the next 5 years, 6 years or whatever, the output was really undeniable. And so that may have been what the benefit was, is that God decided to energize, the writing significantly. And so, yeah, and so I hope that's helpful, because it's hard sometimes to compare my experience to the writing of another author, just because we all interpret our experience differently according to our own experience and our thinking of it and all that stuff, if that makes sense. Okay, so here's another one. In your out-of-body travels, have you seen if Jesus Christ is also called Sananda, as in Ascended Master Sananda, and the planet Earth is also referred to as Gaia? And I could say I have never seen either. Doesn't mean it's not true or that it isn't the case. Just means I have never seen it myself. In your out-of-body travels, have you seen any of Jesus's incarnations? There are some beliefs that Jesus incarnated as Joseph of Egypt, Joshua, who was Moses' assistant and led the Israelites across the Jordan River, and Joshua, who's the first high priest during the reconstruction of the Jewish temple after the return of the Jews from the Babylonian captivity. And there are some beliefs that John the Baptist is Elijah reincarnated. I always think those things are really fascinating too, but I have never seen or been told anything about Jesus's reincarnations. And so, no, I have not. I have not seen anything about that. And I would be just as interested as you are to know more about that. Okay, here we are. All right. I am writing you to ask for your help. I, like you, had an NDE at age 2, drowned in a swimming pool and went to the white place. And at 19, I had another NDE after emergency surgery. Went to my job, then through the ceiling to outer space, moving faster than the speed of light. What a rush. Got scared, then forced myself to go back. I could never talk to anyone about any of this, and those terms weren't even used then. I have had many OBEs in my life and have been able to see and hear things from other dimensions. Because I had no one to teach me, I learned by accident how to do many things like remote viewing, see through the eyes of an animal, or seeing into someone's thoughts or experiences. I only concentrate on doing this if I feel it is very important. There was always an electrical aspect to me which is hard to explain, but I believe when you go to where the pure energy is, it changes yours. I got cancer almost 11 years ago. I was terminal. As I told the doctors, I'm not normal. Sometimes it works in my favor and sometimes it doesn't. After the second dose of very heavy chemo, everything went quiet and was peaceful. That other side of me and I was very happy about it because it's kind of the like post-traumatic stress disorder where it's always on your mind. However, I didn't really know how much integrated into me it all was. After I got into remission and started healing, I did have one out-of-body experience. I had forgotten how much I love to fly and levitate, but that was it. It has not come back. That whole part of me is gone, and I just want it back. I've tried meditating. I've tried all the tricks that I know to connect. Nothing. I was wondering if you might know something that would help. I just don't feel like me anymore, and I don't feel the same without it. I've been getting an infusion every 3 weeks of Herceptin since I got into remission, and I recently stopped all of it in the hopes of bringing me back. The doctor says I'm playing Russian roulette, but I really don't care, you see, because I know that I am eternal. I know I will not die, and in many ways, I am immortal. This poor body is so worn out as it is, I don't think I have much to lose. But if you can think of anything that will help me get back, I would really appreciate any suggestions you have. Oh my, right? Let me see. Adriana says, thank you, Marilynn. Very helpful. It helps me to put things in perspective and know that each experience is unique, but above all, God is almighty and his love and mercy. Yes, I must not forget that it always comes down to God's goodness and his mercy, and love is a gift to us. Yes, it is. Very well said, Adriana. Thank you for those thoughts. That's so true. That's so very true. And, very true, even in relation to this person's question. And, it's so easy to relate to this as someone who has these gifts that, when you feel like you've lost them, boy, that's a bummer, right? And so what I said to her was, I cannot advise you medically, but I would suggest you do whatever therapies your medical team advises. I can say that some medical treatments do impact our travels. Ironically, some enhance it and others do impair it. But what you should keep in mind that this is only temporary when you're going through treatment. Also, you don't know for sure that the treatment is the culprit anyway, because we also go through periods where the experiences just stop of themselves anyway. Dark nights of the soul and dry periods and otherwise. Please don't make your choice for treatment based on this. I understand, believe me, I do, but this is not the reason to choose to live or die. Make that choice on the merits of the treatment in your case and whether or not it can really help you. While these experiences are absent, this is a good time to expand on other parts of your spiritual journey. Engage in more prayer, meditation, and spiritual reading. In fact, this would be a great time to read up on mystical theology, which would actually help you to better understand this mechanism, the mechanism of dryness, dark nights of the soul, how things, are really active at certain periods, and then they become very dry and they stop at different times. But I know your plate is obviously full with your illness, so you may not be able to do this. During my illnesses, I've been through ebbs and flows too. I've also had periods of dryness that had nothing to do with my illnesses. And I found over the decades that these periods of dryness serve a purpose. They allow us to integrate our love of God, our spiritual essence, more into our lives without requiring the consolations that God has been giving to us. But there's a lot to understand here, which is why I suggest reading up on mystical theology. Totally understand the electrical aspect to who you are and who you were. It's very hard to lose that, like you feel that you have. A lot of people will have fewer experiences just as they get older, because this is a natural progression of the maturing of the spiritual life. St. Teresa of Avila spoke about this. The COVID shots seem to have done this for some people as well, especially the mRNA ones. Don't let this make your decision about your cancer care for you. Take care of yourself first, knowing that you could come out the other end and possibly get that back again, or that if it's not as frequent as it once was, that you will adapt, and it could be due to aging. Let me know how you're doing and what you decide. And, this happens to all of us at different points in our life, and it can have nothing to do with getting sick. And people really get upset once they start having these experiences because it is very hard to, peer into the mystical realms and then have them withdrawn from us. It's very hard because it is an ecstatic type experience, and people have a hard time going back to the mundane. But this is actually part of the mystical life and the spiritual life, to learn how to be content and at peace, even in the material world, with or without the consolations and the graces that God offers us through these kinds of experiences. So just keep that in mind. All right, let's see. All right, so hello, dear Marilynn. Let me start by saying that I was sorry when I heard the news that Pope Francis passed away today. Definitely the world will miss him and his caring, loving, compassionate, and yet simple character. I loved that he was from South America like me. Not that it matters, but I just liked it. And I liked him so much too. Here is a question for your live. No worries if you can't answer, it's okay. Recently, I listened for the second time the rites of passage, and again, I learned so much more. Let me go to the question, for I have the tendency to just talk and talk and talk. In your out-of-body travels, have you seen our Savior Jesus Christ as it is described in Isaiah 53:2 specifically? Okay, so here is the verse that my question is about. The New International Version says, "He had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him, nothing in his appearance that we should desire him." The English Standard, "He had no form or majesty that we should look at him, and no beauty that we should desire him." There's a few other translations of the same scripture. Yes. But I've also seen him as the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, when he really displays his majesty. So this is a hard one to actually answer well, because the only way I can say it is that when you see Christ, when I see Christ, there are times when I'm thrown on my knees and then onto my face, prone in the sign of the cross, because of the holiness of the moment. There have been times when I've seen him on his throne wearing the golden crown as the King of Kings, and he's just stunningly beautiful. Most of the time when I see Jesus, he's just so holy, so sacred. It's just, you can't even put words on the awe that you feel. But I have seen him. Now, the way I'll put it is, I've seen him in some instances where I have been allowed to experience how other souls do not recognize him. And this is when I've seen him where he is just a plain person, like a plain human. But I instantly recognized him, and I instantly feel the awe. But the people all around me didn't know who he was. They didn't have the ability to identify who he was, because all they could see was, this description of, he had no form or majesty that we should look at him. They were expecting the Lord to appear in a different way, in some kind of a astonishing way. And they did not have the ability to see him through the eyes of holiness. And they were expecting him to, just come down from the sky with the majestic. But I've seen him do that too. But one of the things that you learn in the mystical is that you recognize holiness by vibration and frequency, by holiness itself, by the sacred vibration. And so I had no problem recognizing who this was, but there were a lot of people around me and these were souls who were going through a purgatorial type experience in the afterlife. They didn't even know who he was, and they were so disrespectful to him. I couldn't believe it. But they could not see beyond that he came as a plain human being. So yes, I have seen that. But I also want to say, if you have the eye of holiness, you'll know who he is. And he will not appear plain to you, But also I have seen him with great, great glory. And most of the time that I've seen him, that's how I see him, in some beautiful, great, glorious way. So, the Lord is not limited in any way. So he can come in a lot of different ways. It looks like there's some thoughts coming out. I want to make sure I capture. I must not forget that it always comes down to God's goodness and his mercy and love. Yes, the Bible describes him in his majesty as well, but in his earthly life, he was a man of sorrows, familiar with the pain, deepest grief, as Isaiah described. Yes, Pharisees and Sadducees did not recognize him either, the suffering servant. And the Bible describes him coming in his great glory. Yes, I would totally agree with that. Yes. So we have one more question, and then we will try to wrap things up here. I'm so grateful that all of you have stuck with me today. But this one requires a little bit of reverence and a great deal of compassion. So I found my way to your work through a very personal and urgent need. I recently lost someone I love, and I believe with everything in me that his death wasn't fated. He wasn't ready to go. I believe there is still a way to reach the point in time where I can intervene and help him live. But I know I need guidance from someone who's walked this road, someone who understands that love doesn't obey linear time. You've written about traveling into the past, not just to observe, but to intervene. That's what I'm seeking. To return to the night he needed me, to take him to the hospital, to help him live. I'm not seeking to disturb divine order. I'm asking to step back into the thread where I believe he can still be saved. If you feel moved to help me, I would be endlessly grateful. Even one piece of guidance would mean more than I can say. This is not just about grief. It's about love and doing what I was meant to do. Protect him. As you can imagine, that was a tough one to answer, right? So it's literally heartbreaking to hear your story and what you've been through, and that on some level, you hold yourself accountable for your beloved because you either weren't there or you were, but in either case were unaware he needed urgent medical help. I have a lot of thoughts to share, but I am sorry that I cannot offer you anything that will turn the events back and change the outcome. Firstly, I don't choose what situations I have been called into. I only respond to them when the Lord so deigns to bring me into them. And in this situation, you are on a timeline. And in this timeline, this person has passed away. It is true that there are many things in our lives that happen every single day where things happen which were not fated, and either through our own choices or the choices of those around us, the complicated interplay of many events in the world around us, and so much more, the fates change. It is also true that there are very rare instances where a sudden and tragic death is not met with this very sense of confusion and unrest, wherein it feels that it wasn't meant to be. If only this, if only that. But the reality is that all of us have experienced tragedies and events where the if onlys could not have been foreknown, except to God alone. Yes, it is possible that even Jason was taken by surprise, as most who are taken unexpectedly, tragically, suddenly will feel. But even so, it also doesn't necessarily mean that their fate has been changed either. And if it were his fate to go at that time, this is something which would have been made known to him during his passing, and he would come to understand it. And if it was not, if choices, circumstances, or other things actually did change a more desired outcome for his soul, this would also have now been explained to his soul, and he would understand this as well, because all souls have many death dates, and it is not an indication of any failure if one is met earlier on. In the end, either way, in this timeline where you live, he has passed, and as gut-wrenching a reality as this now is to deal with in your daily reality and struggle, it is what is and cannot be changed. Sure, there are parallel worlds where maybe things went differently, but this is not where you live. You are here. Remember, you are here. So how can you help him live? That was your question. How can you protect him? These are your questions. And the thing is, Jason still lives. Don't forget this. And you can still do these things for him now. In this new life, he is greatly helped by prayer, by a particular kind of prayer. And you can protect him also by another type of prayer to shield him as he moves forward into this new life, which will eventually include you someday. What I would recommend you consider doing is start a few things going for him. In terms of protecting, you can begin with simple prayers to surround him in an aura of protection. For instance, the St. Michael prayer, but also the Holy Rosary, the Chaplet of the Divine Mercy. You can also just go to Catholic Holy Masses or even watch the Holy Mass online, for instance, at ewtn.com, and offer your Mass for him, and that will not cost anything at all. The Chaplet of the Divine Mercy. You can pray the Office for the Dead. I actually have the texts. It's in the Liturgy of the Hours. So I often pray it myself for my loved ones who pass. But you can use videos from the internet for this as well. It's on YouTube. It's also on our course of study on the internet in our website. You can also pray the Stations of the Cross. There are also some things you can do that might cost you a little bit of money. I do them for my deceased loved ones who are really important to me. So I'll share them with you in case you would want to do that. There are websites you can go to, the Seraphic Mass Association, where you can sign people up to have perpetual masses for their soul. You can also sign people up for Gregorian masses, and that's where a single priest will offer a Gregorian mass for that soul every single of the day of the month for a month. And this is very special and very efficacious for the soul. Many mystics, and myself included, have seen how these masses help those souls who have crossed over to live in their new lives and make progress. If you can't afford the Gregorian masses, don't worry about it. Just do what you're able to do. There are a lot of things you can do. You can offer any religious service you attend for the benefit of their soul. Any prayer for their soul, spiritual reading for their soul, meditation for their soul. All your love, good thoughts are all offerings that you offer for their soul's journey. Do feel, however, that you will have to come to terms with blaming yourself for whatever it was that took his life. Remember, it was a disease or an overdose. You haven't specified. You have not given me any reason to believe that you should have had divine insight into the peril his body was in that day. Even if you knew there was something wrong, but you just didn't realize it was mortal danger, remember that happens to a lot of people. It happens even to doctors. We're not omnipotent beings, and you can't hold yourself to such a height in this horrible, tragic loss. I have no doubt that your beloved does not. Your beloved would know fairly soon after his passing quite a bit more about the reason for this passing. If it were something that came at his own hand, or whatever disease process which took him unawares, he would know of his own responsibility if he had any, and he would understand the unknowns if this were more of the manner in which he passed, like a disease. If he didn't know about, or one he knew he had but didn't realize it was as serious as it was. We are mortal by nature, and this always takes us by surprise because we live our lives as if it is permanent. But I cannot doubt that this person loved you any less than you love him. Cannot imagine a soul who has been the recipient of so many tears does not also weep for you, because he also wants to help you to live. And he wants to protect you, even if that might have to be protecting you from your own guilt and self-blame. Ironically, what I'd like to say in closing to you is that so few of us realize that one of the best things we can do for those we love who have crossed over to live and to walk forward into their new lives is to free ourselves from our guilt and shame about the manner of their death and go on and live our own. Holding on to them because we attribute some responsibility for life and death which we do not hold actually makes it harder for them to move forward into that new life, that new journey which they must also embrace. Free yourself and you'll free him to live again. And it will make him feel safe to soar higher, and you will be together again. You will, but not right now. Just not yet. Keep loving him as he will you, and you will never have to forget. But living your life is how you honor him, because it allows him to do what God now requires of him as well. Honor each other by honoring what must be right now. And you'll come back together when God ordains it yet again, and it will be beautiful. With that, I think we're going to wrap things up. Hello, Sue B. Thank you so much for joining us. She says, I pray every day for my beautiful daughter who accidentally took her life 2021, never forgotten. Thank you, Sue, for sharing that with us. Thank you for sharing that with us. I'm so sorry for your loss. Can't even imagine it. I have 3 adult children. So sorry for you. I can't even imagine. Sorry. So sorry for you, Sue. Adriana says, I am so very sorry, Sue. Pray, keep praying. Sue says, I'm waiting for the day when we can be reunited again. I can imagine. I can totally imagine. I'm so glad you're here with us, Sue. And if you didn't hear the rest of that, maybe that would be helpful to replay it when it processes through on the video. And feel free to pop me an email at Marilynn Hughes at outofbodytravel.org, and we can talk about it some more privately if you'd like. And thank you all so much for joining me today. Very grateful that all of you were here. Again, subscribe, become a member. All these things help us to keep us searchable and help us keep all of our stuff free for everyone everywhere around the world. Love you all so much, and we'll see you next time.